A little while ago, I got to catch up with arguably the best surfer to ever come from the African continent. I'm wearing my pink shirt in honor of him. I remember growing up as a kid having that poster on the wall, him riding that pink banana. The man we're speaking about is a philanthropist, an author, a motivational speaker, a multiple world champion surfer, and a man that really was pivotal and seminal in South Africa's surfing heritage. He changed the way people surfed one of the most iconic breaks in the world at Pipeline. I'm sure you've guessed it by now. It's Shaun Thompson. We're going to be catching up with Shaun and chatting to him about his surfing history in South Africa, his journey in life, and his view on how he applies surfing as a metaphor to how we can approach life. And our conversation goes well that Shaun makes this really big announcement, and I'm the first dude to hear about it in South Africa. So you're going to have to keep listening to find out what that is. We also talk about his new book, The Surfer and the Sage. I believe it's not available in South Africa just yet, but it did go live on sale in the US. So I'm going to leave all the links down below and you can buy it on Amazon. Let's support Shaun. Let's jump straight into this episode of Shredding the Gnar with Shaun Thompson.
Well, I grew up in Durban, and I was a beach boy. It's my earliest memories of being on the beach with my mom and dad. My dad loved the beach. He was in Durban surf when he was young. He was a champion swimmer, and his dream was to go to the Olympics. Hanging out on North Beach and South Beach. And he was at a little break they call Kentucky, which is South Beach. Mm-hmm. And he was out there on his little wooden board, and he got really badly attacked by a shark.
Oh, wow.
And nearly bit his right arm off. So it was a long period of recuperation. All his friends left him there, and a brave lifeguard, Brian Viljoen, swam out there, rescued, pulled my dad, and they took him to Addington. It was touch and go for a number of days, but he survived. And then, he loved swimming. And he loved surfing, and his dad sent him for hand surgery to San Francisco. And then after surgery, he went to recuperate in Hawaii and met all the Kahanamokus. Tu Kahanamoku had been one of his heroes as a swimmer because he was a multi-Olympic medalist. He loved Hawaii forever thereafter. And, when he came back, he could never swim competitively again, but he never lost his love for the ocean, and taught me how to swim and surf maybe 100 meters away from where he'd been attacked, a couple hundred meters away. Of course, always very watchful, but loved this sort of new surfing movement. Loved hanging out with young people on the beach. He'd stand there with his binoculars and watch all of us, and surfing was just developing. Back then, the first South African surfing championships, I think, were held in 65 or 66. I started surfing. I had a Wetland Surfmaster pop-out little board that my dad bought me, 4'6", that I started surfing on. I caught my first wave at the Bay of Plenty with my cousin Michael and a good friend, Bruce Jackson. My dad had divorced my mom and was dating Bruce's mom. So it was just a very tight family on the beach there at the Bay of Plenty. The Bay, we became members of the Bay Surf Club, and then there was just a great crew of red hot young surfers in Durban that my dad was sort of like the godfather there. Eventually, Wetland Surfboards got into some financial trouble. My dad bought into the business, bought a new building for Wetland, and sort of regenerated the brand, and we were all riding Wetland surfboards. There was just a great crew: Paul Noddy and Kevin Todd, Ricky Jordan, Michael Esposito used to come up from the wedge. Gavin Rudolph used to surf with us, and then the early days, Peter Richards, Mock Richards, Jeremy Yates was Bruce Jackson. I mean, we just had this incredible crew of some of the best surfers in the world, and we'd surf every day, and we'd compete against each other every day, and just have so much fun on the beach at the Bay of Plenty. And then my dad started the Gunston 500 with Max Wetland and a guy called Ian McDonald in '69. And they brought Midget Farrelly out, and it was the first time we'd seen a super famous pro surf, and there were thousands of people on the beach. And that was the start, I think, of a whole new era and professionalism in South African surfing. And then my dad bought Peter Benessen. Peter Benessen was a surfer on the beach,
Yep.
and a really successful businessman.
Mike's
And
dad,
then,
eh? That's Mike's dad.
yeah, Mark, and Mark Benessen, of course. There was a whole younger crew starting up. There were the Milnes, the Milne family. Unfortunately, I heard we just lost Merle Milne today. He was a big figure in
I believe so, yes.
South African
Sure.
surfing. So there was Bruce and Glenn and Laureen. I mean, amazing surfers. And the dad used to build his own boards. He was like one of the first watermen. So Graham Hines, and then Spider came involved. It was just this wonderful period on the beach of us young guys just being stoked, and professional surfing sort of building around us. And then there was the Natal Surfing Association, and we had contests every month, so we'd be competing against each other, and the competition was as tough as any like WSL event today, and we had that on a monthly basis. So we were all improving and pushing each other, and then I managed to do well, and my dad took me to Hawaii for my bar mitzvah, my first trip there when I was 14, and rode huge waves. And I came back with a lot of confidence, and I came back greatly improved. And what happened, I'd go overseas and compete and come back and be really improved and ahead of everyone. And then within a few weeks, everyone had caught up again, and we were all fighting it out. So it was this constant process, I think, of improvement. And we were always pushing towards the international standard. It wasn't like we had a standard in South Africa. We wanted to be the best, but it was all in good fun, and we were super stoked. And when I look back now, it was just a beautiful time. And yes, there was apartheid and segregation, but we were young, and it was like we didn't really, I think, in some ways, we didn't really have this awareness that we ultimately came to understand.
Yes.
and be aware of. But just from this little surfing perspective on the beach at the Bay of Plenty, it was a very beautiful time.
Yeah, that's where I got my first wave as well, at the Bay on a Mike Lamont. So definitely resonates.
Mike Lamont too. He's another amazing surfer that came down to the Bay in the later years.
What about the crossover from like the 60s and the 70s? Because I believe there was like the schism whereby you had, your Ant van der Heuvels, who kind of, when you went over to California, there was this like almost, the Worm, he had this real, he came from a more reserved sort of background and school and train of thought. And his wish was also to, really like make surfing professional within the South African sort of crew at the time. But wasn't there this time where there was almost this crossover from the 60s into the 70s, where it got a little bit, you had, someone like yourself who was highly professional, sort of moving into the professional area, and, an athlete at your peak performance. And then you had some of the dudes who were just like really getting into the hippie vibes.
Surfing's always had that duality, free surfing and competitive surfing. And I've always felt that they can, merge perfectly and stay connected. I always thought of myself as both a very professional athlete, but also as a lover of free surfing. I always thought my surfing was like poetry, like art, but in a competitive situation, you're out there for one reason, and that's really to win. So there was that contrast between kind of the freedom lifestyle drugs of the late 60s and professionalism as it related to the public perception of surfing. And I think, we were very, I think all of us, the guys from the Bay and the guys from Cape Town, Jonathan Parman was just this mind-blowingly incredible surfer.
Yes.
We could see that the way forward in terms of wanting to create an industry, to build a sport, was by having a professional outlook. And drugs didn't play a part in that. So if you're involved in drugs, you just like any sport on the universe, on the planet, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, rugby, cricket, tennis, drugs have no place if you want to compete in an organized, competitive environment. You want to smoke dope, you want to do whatever you want to do. That's great. You must follow your own path. You must make your own choices. But it has no part in organized professional surfing. That's not to say that we're out there making these moral judgments on people that want to use dope. You want to use dope, that's your path. But you want to be a part of the pro scene. There's no room for dope. Not only is it unfair, and in some ways it's like cheating, because certain drugs are certainly performance enhancers, but you're not going to be able to attract a multinational sponsor if you allow this aspect of surfing to be a part of the organized competitive structure. So that's what we're trying to do. You want to focus on the competitive aspect. You got to be clean, and I think that surfing had, when I say a bad reputation, bad is the wrong word to use, because, but it had a reputation of like, it's like freedom, counterculture, drop out, tune in, just bail out a society. And you could still do that, but you didn't have to do dope. But certainly there was a perception that there was an alignment with dope. So we were, I think, as a group, we could see that sponsorship, mainstream media was a path forward, and that's the path we took, all of us. My cousin Michael, myself, Paul Nadie, Kevin Todd, all of the guys, Michael Mont, all the guys that really helped, Jonathan Palmer, that helped build the pro aspect. That's the path that we took, and it worked out well, because surfing became, in South Africa, it wasn't as big as rugby, cricket, tennis, but it was accorded the same respect.
Yeah.
And I felt that as an athlete, and the other South African pro surfers, as athletes, we were accorded respect, and the media accorded us respect, and felt that we were involved in a solid sporting endeavor. It wasn't like, these dopers just, playing out there in the waves, man. We could see there's going to be a circuit, there's going to be world champions. We were as good as any F1 driver. We were as good as James Hunt, or, whoever the F1 guy, hot F1 guy. We were as good as McEnroe and Borg. We were as good as Joel Stransky. We were or Rob Lowe, who's also a surfer and a mate of mine.
True.
Yeah, that's what we felt, and that's the way we pushed it.
Well, I mean, we talk about guys like Dick Metz, Hobie Alter, and Grubby Clark. I mean, and the endless summer, and we all know that Bruce Brown kind of like almost gave it a little bit of a comedic spin, and just going back to that the 1960s, and how well respected South African surfers were at that time, pre-apartheid, and they were, like, you guys were regarded as some of the best surfers in the world, and pivotal in the surfing heritage, like, world at the time, but it's interesting that, I was also listening to the fact that, you write a lot of poetry, and you enjoy, obviously, literature, and going to your creative side now, and talking about professionalism and surfing. Is that something that you've had from a young age, or is it something that you kind of grew into and matured into, sort of the arts and literature later on in life?
No, I think I had it from a pretty young age, and I think as South Africans, we're certainly exposed, or we were then in the 70s and 80s. We're exposed to quite a serious sort of English style private school education, even if you didn't go to a private school, you still were reading the Oxford classics. You were exposed to great poetry, great literature, and I think the whole notion of a scholar, gentleman, and athlete, a well-rounded person, was the goal. And I think I'm a function of that. I think my entrepreneurial spirit certainly came from my family, my dad and his grandparents. They were my grandfather came to South Africa with nothing, man, nothing. He came from Jewish grandfather coming from the pogroms in Russia, and came to South Africa, started repairing kettles, and then just became successful. So that entrepreneurial drive, and I started Instinct, my first company in South Africa, with some partners in what was it, like 1979, 1980. So I certainly had that entrepreneurial drive and that creative spirit, and I've I've lived a life from surfing and through surfing, essentially since I stood on my board in 1965. The only time in my life I've ever worked for anyone, I worked for a couple of years for Patagonia, but other than that, I've been in sort of an independent guy, and surfing's given me everything. And I think I've been thoughtful about my surfing. I've been creative about my surfing. I had my own approach. When I rode Hawaii and became world champion, and before I became a world champion, I just wanted to ride waves differently. I had radical equipment that Spider Murphy made me by mistake in Durban. It was this famous board that came to be called the Pink Banana, and just changed the way waves could be ridden at Pipeline Backside. And then I had these other amazing boards he made me that enabled me to ride inside the tube with using a whole technique, and actually ride inside the tube as opposed to just growing in a straight line. So it was a wonderful creative period for me. There's the best surfers, I think, are surfers that can meld physical performance with mental creativity and mental attitude too. To be a champion, you have to have a very, very strong, focused mindset. I call it the warrior mindset.
Yep.
And sometimes help young surfers who are struggling. I just phone them up and say, hey, I can see you struggling. Here's a little bit of help. Here's a way to create the warrior mindset. So the guys know who they are that I've helped over the years.
I'm sure you've helped.
Couple of South African boys that I love. I love helping the South African guys, and I always tell young surfers, my door's always open. But I got to say, there's humility in asking for help. You have to be humble to ask for help, because you think you got it all worked out and you keep getting shithouse results. Something's going wrong. Your technique, your philosophy, your strategy, there's something wrong there. So you have to be a big person to realize, man, I'm screwing up. And perhaps someone can give me just a little bit of a different path. Perhaps someone can give me 1 millimeter that I can put in my backpack, and it can help me cross over that chasm between failure and success. And I remember when I lost my dad in 1981, and I was devastated. He was a very important part of my career. And I used to love to win for him, and he used to love me to win for him. And I lost my great dad, and I was stuffed. And I asked for help. I asked this amazing pro surfer in Cairns, and he ended up being the first pro surfing coach in the history of the sport, and he helped me because I went from last to second in one event, and then was back hammering away at the world title for many years thereafter. But I always, and if anyone's listening to this, you get stuck, you get in trouble, be humble and ask for help. Sometimes you can't do it yourself. Sometimes you have to submerge your ego and go, hey man, I'm not as great as I think I am. I need some help. And whether it might be a mental issue you're having, and there's been massive mental issues through COVID,
Yeah.
Especially with youth. I mean, youth have been hammered through I call it a sad mindset: stress, anxiety, despair, and disconnection. Just get some help. Pick up a phone call, phone your friend, phone your mom, phone your dad, phone a family member, phone a psychologist, phone a psychiatrist, phone a mental health practitioner. Just get some help. Be humble.
Yeah. We go back to talking about entrepreneurship and the metaphor that surfing plays. I mean, the book, I mean, the Surfer's Code, just Google Surfer's Code, read Surfer's Code. But we talk about entrepreneurship, and they say that to be an entrepreneur, you've got to sort of jump off a cliff and then build an airplane on the way down. And and that's, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for just over a decade now, and it's been one of those roller coaster rides that you've been experiencing since you started Instinct back in 1980 when I was 5 years old. And the humility and the point is this: not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's cut out because it's not a fun path. That those lows with the highs are not easy. You learn from it, and you're hitting the nail on the head by saying, if you might be a great surfer, and we can connect sort of surfing to entrepreneurship in that you've got to like, as you take off, you every wave is different, and you're having to sort of like build that plane on the way down, so to speak, and think about your next move. But not everyone is cut out for, and so to be humble enough to say, hey, let me learn from somebody who's made those mistakes, and the elders of the sport, and gentlemen like yourselves who've paid their dues. You've got to the pinnacle of surfing. It's a great thing. It's a great thing.
No, thank you. I think everyone has to have an entrepreneurial mindset, even if you're an employee of of an NGO or government organization, or you work for a Unilever, or you work for Philips or Siemens. You have to have that entrepreneurial mindset. I think it's really important, and I speak to hundreds of thousands, millions of people now across the world in the biggest, fastest growing companies in the world, schools, universities, rehab clinics, groups of PTSD survivors. And and I tell everyone, I read Surfer's Code, I don't know, 20 years ago. And the Surfer's Code was a simple little card that contained 12 lines. And every line was a metaphor for the fundamental lessons that surfing had taught me about life. And in the context of entrepreneurships, here's 3 of them. I'll take the drop with commitment. You want to be an entrepreneur, you got to bust down that door. You got to paddle over the edge, low tide, 15-foot pipeline, and you got to go. You got to bust through the fear barriers. So for me, that was all about how you're going to be achieving success. You got to paddle over the edge with absolute commitment. Then I'll always paddle back out. As an entrepreneur, you're going to get your ass kicked, as you know, as I know, as everyone who's ever been an entrepreneur, and as everyone who's ever experienced life knows. You're going to have a massive loss in your life. You're going to have a failure, but you paddle back out. And then in the context of that is, I will know that there'll always be another wave. So that represents hope. And as humans, we have this massive reservoir of hope. But every line in the Surfer's Code starts with I will, those 2 words of power and commitment. And what I encourage millions of people around the world to do is like, Surfer's Code's my code. I wrote it. I wrote it in 20 minutes, 12 lines. Every word beginning with I will, 105 words. As I say to people, and hundreds of thousands of people have done, write your own code. Write your own manifesto. Write down your purpose. 12 lines, every line begins with I will. It's really simple. Just get out a sheet of paper and have 15 or 20 minutes of quiet time and write your code. I will what? I will have faith. I will pray. Whatever. Everyone writes poetry. And so I've read millions of lines of code. And I got to tell you, like, I had an amazing life as a pro surfer. I achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I surfed the best waves in the world, rode the biggest, gnarliest waves, got the deepest, most animal tube rides, did fun things. But when I see and read these codes, it's like every time I do it, I think, wow, man, I'm like riding inside one of these deep, awesome barrels again. It gives me the same charge and satisfaction to see the amazing poetry of the human spirit language. That's what it's called. When people write their codes, 12 lines, every line beginning with that, well, they write spirit language because they're revealing their spirit, not only to themselves, but I do the super cool process when I do these huge events. People reveal it to everyone else. So it creates this amazing unity, which is one of the fundamental societal problems right now, lack of unity. So people see this and they see that while we're all different, we all write different codes, we're all bound by these common values. And it's beautiful to see. And it's beautiful to see that while everyone writes 12 lines and everyone writes different lines, we only write 2 lines. There's 2 lines of code that describe the human spirit and who we are. And the one line is, I will be better. So everyone has this compulsion, this commitment, this quest to be better today than they were yesterday, tomorrow than they are today. And then we also on this, if there's a river of purpose in life and there's 2 tributaries and one is, I will be better. The other one is, I will help others be better. We want to help be mentors. We want to help be teachers. We want to help be leaders. We want to uplift humanity. And that's revealed in every single line of code. When I read 12, it's like half of them are about self and half of them are about others. And that's the way we are as humans. And it's beautiful to see.
Very cool. Thank you for those insights, Shaun. I'm sure everyone watching is going to be appreciative of it. And it's a fun thing to create your own manifesto and essentially your stamp of authenticity, and what you stand for. And as you say, it's intrinsically within us as humans to want to help others and do good and be a better person. So shall we talk a little bit about your new book, The Surfer and the Sage, and touch on that?
Yes, I have a new book. We're not exactly sure when we're going to release it in SA.
Okay.
But it's releasing here in the USA on the 7th of June. So it's releasing really soon.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called The Surfer and the Sage, a guide to survive and ride life's waves. So, I'll wait, hold on. I want to grab it. Hold on.
Please do.
So here's the book.
Beautiful. It's a lovely cover, hey?
Yeah, it's a beautiful little book, and it's got super cool pics in it, and surf pics and kind of lifestyle pics. So it was written through COVID. So I went to lunch, and this friend of mine said, "Listen, I want to invite someone to lunch. I think you guys would get on." And he's a well-known poet and philosopher here in our little town and around the country. He's written books that have sold millions and millions of copies. And his name is Noah Ben-Shir. And I met him, and we just hit it off. We just got an instant vibe with each other. And within like 5 minutes of meeting, he told me about what he was doing, and I told him about what I was doing. He said, "Hey, Shaun, we should write a book together." And I went, "Cool." I said, "And we'll call it The Surfer and the Sage," because he's a philosopher. Just write like that. And he said, "Okay, a guide to survive and ride life's waves." And in like 3 minutes. We had the title, and we had the subtitle, and then we started, putting it together. And obviously through COVID, it started just to develop differently, because I would do these events with huge companies, and I would ask the attendees. So maybe I'd have 1,000 or a couple thousand people online. I would go, send me a word that describes how you're feeling. So I use this cool technology. They text me a word, and it comes up on the screen, and then it forms a word cloud. So the more common words are bigger.
Right.
So the words I kept seeing, I told you earlier, were reflective of what I call a sad mindset. So stress was a big word. Anxiety was a big word. Disconnection, depression, despair. Like these were, and these are from people that were like fully employed. Their companies were rocking. I mean,
Blue
Gilead
chips.
Sciences. This is the first company that invented the first treatment for COVID before vaxxers. Was called remdesivir. It was the only treatment in the world. So these companies, the employees were under incredible pressure, but they were financially very secure. So even these people that don't have financial insecurity are still suffering. So I could see that, and I told Noah that, listen, there is this issue, and perhaps if we can offer this little guide that speaks about the duality of life, it speaks about despair and hope. It speaks about pessimism and optimism. So we did 18 chapters, 18 because it has a biblical reference. 18 in Hebrew means chai. It means life.
Right.
So we did like despair and hope, anxious and calm, confusion and clarity, isolated and connected. We tried to cover these major issues
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing that people were faced with: uncertain and committed, frailty and resilience, fear and courage. So the way we did it is like I'd tell a little story and give my my more literal interpretation, and then it was like Noah would write like a little philosophical commentary. So it's meant to just be like a little book you can put by the side of your bed, or you can carry it around, and okay, now you can read about hubris and humility.
Brilliant.
And in hubris, I tell a story about like big wave. I'm out at Waimea, and I'm the first time I've ever surfed it. I'm in the final of a contest with all the Aussie legends and the Hawaiian legends. I'm the only dude from South Africa, and I paddled my first wave, a mega like 25-foot wave, and I jumped to my feet. First wave of the final, and I think in my mind, I got this. Next thing, the wave hits the reef, stand straight up.
Jax.
I'm flying through space, and my ass is grass. So it's about like having hubris when you should be having humility, and so that's what the book is, and it's not like a prescription, but it's just like a little guide, and it'll become hopefully part of the culture, part of surfing culture, and I'm hoping it's going to have a nice crossover into the mainstream community as well.
Yeah, it sounds epic. Look forward to reading that when it hits the shelves here in South Africa. I think it's great that, as you say, you identifying. I mean, what not only surfers, but a lot of people have been throughout this COVID period, and the impact that it's had. There's so many people that I think your little guide is going to resonate with beyond the surfing community, and it's just awesome that we'll get to read it and hopefully apply some of the principles and the guidelines that you've given us.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's a I think it's a special little book. It was fun to write it and put it together, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that people enjoy it. I got really good response from my first book, Surface Code, and that came, at a very hard time in my life when I lost
Matthew, yeah.
Matthew, and then Patrick Mose and I, we wrote the Code, which was sort of a follow-on, and after we lost Matthew, it was really it was a framework for young people to make better decisions. So now that book is, a lot of businesses use it, and I did an event 2 weeks ago for like 2,000 students at Missouri State University. So everyone has to read the book. They call them freshmen. That's their first year,
Yes,
because the
yes.
university is 4 years long. So the freshmen, the first years, they all have to read it, and then everyone wrote their codes. It's cool. We did
That's
it
right,
all.
eh?
I went to the university in Missouri State in Springfield, Missouri. It's as far about from the ocean as you can
Classic.
get, but surfing speaks to people.
Yeah.
Steve, I tell you what, it speaks to people at a very deep level, because the sea is so big and there's so much uncertainty and risk, and you're so insignificant in the context of the ocean, and I think people just sort of get that. And then if you can build a metaphor around that, even if a person has been into football, baseball, basketball all their lives, they can still think, wow, I know nothing about surfing, but it's pretty cool. The same way when I talk to kids in a township in Katlehong, um, and when I first started doing, I was nervous. I was thinking, are these kids even going to relate to me? Are they going to relate to the stories? Are they going to relate to the metaphor? And the kids were stoked. And when I went to climb the
Brilliant.
school
Brilliant.
in Durban, the first school started by a black African, and where Mandela voted for democracy in 1994. And I talked to the kids there, and they stoked, and I get stoked. And surfing's got power, man, power.
A lot of energy, a lot of energy. I spoke to a marine biologist yesterday, and she just really opened my eyes to, and as you say, the ocean holds such tremendous energy and power. I mean, it's over 75% of the Earth's surface, and the things that we've yet to discover in the ocean, and the fact that it provides us with 70% of the world's oxygen by means of phytoplankton. That we always thought it was the lungs of the earth were the Amazon forest, but it's actually
Yeah.
phytoplankton which provide us with most of our oxygen. So 2/3 of our breath come from the ocean. So I mean, you're right, the ocean's energy is so powerful, and surfing just is a segue. Well, it's a connective between us as humans and the energy in a wave. It's so inspiring. Shaun, it's been an absolute treat. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you very much for allowing me into your thoughts and your mind, and providing a lot of younger South African surfers some inspiration. And we really appreciate you as a South African community, surfing
Uh,
community. We really do.
no, I am. I'm very, very excited. And another thing I wanted to tell you is that, which is very exciting for me from a South African perspective, and that is, I'm relaunching Instinct in South Africa. So yeah, so
That's the coolest thing I've heard all year. You're
yeah,
brilliant.
so we're very, very excited to that. We're putting it all together now. We're launching with a Durban-based company,
Brilliant.
and it's called O2 Clothing, and the boys are going to be making it in Durban, old school way. Hey, how about that?
Fantastic.
Making product old school in the factory in Durban.
Hey, one
So,
time.
so we are we very stoked with that. So
Isn't that
when
how your brand started, in a garage in
yeah,
Durban?
it started in Durban.
Yeah.
So
Like
so
Morningside,
it's
Essenwood Road or something.
yeah, it's going to be back. It's going to be back to the roots,
Lekker.
which is just going to be it's going to be great. And then I tell you what would be so amazing. So when we're getting ready, it would be great because we've got all sorts of cool social upliftment and community stuff that we're going to be doing. We're going to be aligning with this amazing group called 9 Miles Project out of Cape Town. I
Yes,
don't know
we
if you
know
know
Nine
them.
Miles. Yes,
I
definitely.
love those dudes.
As Wavescape,
So,
we're working closely with a lot of the NPOs and NGOs, and 9 Miles is one of
okay.
them.
So 9 Miles is very cool. So the percentage of every product sold is going to go to 9 Miles. Yeah. And
Awesome.
there's a whole story associated with that, which I'd like to discuss. And I think people would be so stoked to hear it a little bit closer to the time. So that's very very exciting. You're the first person that knows about it in SA.
I
So
feel
we'll
privileged. Thank you,
you know,
Shaun.
yeah, we're going to do the whole press thing and all that. But at the moment, we've been keeping it under wraps. But it's been a cool discussion, and
Thank you
yeah,
very
we
much.
just sort of get the word percolating out there.
Definitely. Yeah, I had a great interview with Frank Solomon a few weeks ago. I've got one of the podcasts on YouTube. I've had great discussions I've been connecting with a lot of guys on your side of the world. Chris Cote, one of them. He's
a classic dude. Yeah.
We formed there goes my webcam. Let me just pull it back. I've formed quite a good relationship.
That's what happens when you discuss Chris Cote. Everything falls apart.
That's it. I'll blame it on you,
so
Chris.
Crazy. He's such a Malyan.
Shaun Thompson, it's been absolute gold getting to know you. You're a lekker, well, we Durbanites, so we banana boys, so we immediately got something in common.
I love Durban's got such a special place in my heart, man. I love that town.
Yeah, I know it's a great city. Every time we go back, it's just like grab a bunny chow, go sit on the beachfront, get a bit of a wave. The banks are good to us, and
yeah. Very cool.
Shaun, thanks very much.
I'm Shaun Thompson, and I'm shredding the gnaw. Yeah.
Lekker.